The Big Dog Postgame Show is brought to you by Viener X Consulting. We make your company work. And by Rick Jacklich, the big dog himself, at the Jacklich Law Group.
Good afternoon. This is the Big Dog Postgame Show. Today, Maryland, all over Princeton, 13-9. I'm Wayne Viener. That's Bruce Posner. And we also have Wheels Tony Wheeler joining us. I'm going to go with Bruce first. Bruce, who was your player of the game? What'd you see out there?
Well, I have a couple players of the game, but the player of the game has been that way almost every game, and that's number one, Logan McNanny. He was just great. And even the first couple goals he gave up for us to fall behind, they were pretty tough. They were right on top of them. The long poles got beat. But after that, he was unbelievable. Listen. I did think we were going to win, but I never thought it'd be like a gate to wire win. All right. Once we got the lead, that was it. And from 3-1 down, kind of like we talked about with basketball, Wayne, from that point on, you just killed them, 12-7 or whatever it was. But the other guy I want to talk about, and I want to hear Tony's comments on this too. I thought today Braden Erksa made the best play he ever made. When he when he faked that step and tossed the ball to Kelly all by himself, it's something I haven't seen from him. And if he comes on and wipes away those turnovers, look out. But Matthew Keegan and Aiken, holy cow! And number 5, the freshman. Tony,
Right.
what'd you
Schmidt.
think, buddy?
For me, that first quarter was unsteady. The Terps are down 4-2. I'm sure McNaney probably would have liked to have made maybe one or two saves. You can't really fault him for some of those. Then all of a sudden the Terps shut down that Princeton defense for almost 25 minutes. The thing that really stood out to me was really that second Terps midfield line. Made a couple tinkering little choices here and there on personnel. You got Aiden Aitken coming in, scoring his first goal ever as a Terp. Jack Schultz, freshman out of New Jersey, gets 2 goals. Elijah Stovall was hunting shots. That second midfield line gets three goals, and the Terps just have way too much scoring depth. The other thing that I really want to emphasize too, before I kick it back to you, Wayne, Andrew McMeekin, the face-off specialist for Princeton, last year against the Terps, against Luke Weirman, 2 games, gets wiped out, 4 wins and 30 attempts. He has a rough game last week against Penn State, goes something like 6 for 20 against Penn State. He came out really hot today and was up, I think, had won the first 4 or 5, face-offs in that first quarter. And all of a sudden, Shea Keithler and Sean Creeder, they turn everything around. They stabilize possessions. Maryland's defense clamps down. Too much offensive depth. Terps off and running. And Bruce, I will tell you, my score prediction was 13-9. I've got it in writing.
On the money. On the money.
When the Terps played the Tigers to go to the national championship game, that was 13-8 back in 2022. I have to focus on the defense. You're starting to think if this can continue, and Notre Dame's a big game next week, another powerful offense. Richmond is better than we thought they were when we played them in week 1. Loyola's not so bad. Syracuse certainly can score. We heard how Princeton can score, and Maryland just comes out and gives up, I think, an average of 7.25 goals per outing on defense. That's phenomenal. The defensive work without any stars. I know we can go back over why Maryland had nobody on the preseason All-American list and why Tillman doesn't care. But you're talking about a team without a star that's playing the best team overall game that you can get. And I can't start comparing them to the greatest team I ever saw before, but they haven't lost yet. And they're playing this airtight defense. I'll throw it over to Bruce for a couple seconds and hear what Tony has to say. Can you keep playing defense at this level?
Well, it sure looks like they can, but I will tell you one thing. Maryland now is 4-0, and they have 2 top 5 wins. 4-0, 2 top 5 wins. Tony, you could make a case that they're number one, not Notre Dame. Now, Notre Dame will be number one, and they'll still be unanimous because they're champions. But look at the comparison to schedules so far. And Georgetown really pushed Notre Dame today. They lost 11-9. They were down 6-0, and they came back. You blinked your eyes, it was 6-5. And look, here's the other thing. Hopkins, they lost today, but it's not a bad loss. North Carolina's got to be up there now. Dominic Petramala, 6 goals, along with Daddy at Homewood Field, and I wouldn't call it an upset, but it was a 1-goal favorite or whatever. But Tony Wheeler, Matt Madeline has to be getting tired of playing Maryland. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, Princeton hasn't beaten Maryland since the early aughts, right? I think Maryland's on an 8 or 9 game,
2004. 2004.
Yeah, so they're on an 8 or 9 game winning streak right now. This is the 6th time in the last 3 seasons they've played each other, and average margin of victory in those 5 in the first 5 games was an average 5-goal win for the Terps. So you kind of knew that this type of 13-9 game might have been in the offing. Wayne, you asked about Maryland's defense and can they continue this. I want to give a little bit of a shout out here to Peter Lake, freshman, got extensive playing time today. He highly regarded, if anyone knows his story about his time at Loyola Blakefield, being resuscitated on the field, during high school, top 10, long pole recruit coming out of high school. They put him in the game today down at close defense. Been playing LSM for a little bit. They put him down there against Nate Kabiri. They've got a history in high school playing each other and probably on the club circuit as well. And they trusted Peter Lake to come in. So, Wayne, you got a situation now. You got 6 really, really good long poles, right, that you can rotate through at close and LSM. You got at least 6 short stick defensive midfielders that ran through that game today, really shut down Princeton's midfield, just like they did last week against Syracuse. They've got the bodies. They've clearly got the scheme. Jesse Bernhardt's clearly preparing that team every week. I think you can ride that defense pretty far. And now you got so much scoring depth on offense. A dangerous team.
Yeah, it is for sure.
Bruce,
and yeah.
Do you think that it's the defense funneling the shots? Because that's what Logan says after the game is the defense gave me the shots I expected to see. Because Logan didn't actually have to stand on his head today. Last week he made some spectacular saves. This week I just think he was really good, and he got the shots that he expected. Do you see it that way?
Well, I see it that we have the best defensive coordinator in lacrosse, and it befuddles me that he's not a head coach somewhere, but that's to our advantage. I think that he prepares this team to the nth degree to have Schaller and Burlace and Peter Lake and all these guys playing at this kind of level is not easy. And then you look at your shorties with Kohler and Stamos and across the board. But Tony, like you told me last week, as we were going into halftime and we were up 6-4, I said to myself, Maryland's the kind of team, you better get ahead of them because we have to be deeper than anybody. When it comes to midfield, you're talking about Jack Dowd and Noah Armitage did not see the field today. And these guys will be a factor before the year is over. But I don't think either of them saw the field. And this Aiden Aiken, oh my Lord, his first shot. And Matthew Keegan, it's like having 6 attackmen out there when the game starts. And
you have to throw Bryce Ford into that, number 24.
Right,
is right up there.
DK gets his 2 goals, and Spanos only got, 1 today? I mean, this offense is not on all cylinders yet, but I'll tell you one thing, Wayne. You mentioned the thing about not having any guys in the top 3 teams, All-America teams from inside lacrosse. And the longer this season goes, the dumber they look. Okay.
Yeah, but I love that line, Bruce.
Well, it's
Absolutely
true, and I hope they.
No All
Tony, I hope
Americans.
they're watching this because I believe that the stupidity that they exhibited by not putting any Maryland guys in there might have been one of the factors that turns this team on. Now, listen, you got Virginia. I mean, you got Dame next week. Delaware took it on the chin today, all right, but maybe it was just an off game for them. And then you got UVA. What was UVA and Ohio State doing, Tony? I didn't look.
UVA got blown out.
Well, then there's a problem with UVA.
I believe
There's,
the final score was 14-5. I believe that was the
wow.
final. Hold on, I'll check it right
Wow.
now.
Well, that just gives us one more game that's tough. How about Michigan? Did they beat Duke?
Michigan lost in overtime to Duke.
I don't know why I'm
Yeah.
rooting for Michigan, but I was.
Yeah, Ohio State
Well,
14-5, and the game wasn't close. It was 7 or 8-1.
14-5 is never close. It's never
Yeah,
close.
and then Duke won 8-7 in overtime.
Who got the winner? Do you know?
It's not going to say yet.
oh, I'll have to bet it's Eric Molliver, of course.
He hadn't scored through 3 quarters, so I don't know about that. But
He did finish with a goal.
maybe he
Mahler.
probably got the winner. Listen,
So I've got one more for Tony before we talk about the future.
right.
Princeton, put a lot of attention stopping the Maryland Stars, if you want to call Spanos. He's had a couple of good games. They pay a lot of attention to him. And as Bruce said, it looks like you have 6 attack out there. Is the growth of that attack because Princeton they went shorty on shorty and just stayed that way because they were trying to stop your Spanos and Kelly from scoring? Or are we seeing an actual evolution of the next set of stars for Maryland in that second midfield?
Princeton's always going to play their style on defense, and it's always predicated on having big mobile defensemen. They're going to press out. You watch the game, you saw them pressing out 25 yards from the goal, right? Like they were harassing Maryland ball carriers all over. They were definitely slow to slide on Maryland's midfield. They clearly wanted to try to force Maryland to beat them in the midfield. They were hopping in and out of a really interesting zone in the second half. It almost looked like an old John Chaney Temple basketball matchup zone.
I love the reference there.
Yeah, I knew you would get that one, Wayne.
Yeah.
And so they very much clearly did not want Spanos to get loose. It was a really good matchup on Molshine. Daniel Kelly, he's just finding ways to score those greasy goals. He's always around the ball. But Urksa was going to have chances today, and he did, and he cashed him in. But they clearly wanted to stop Spanos from behind the net. They clearly wanted Maryland's midfield to try to win the game. And Maryland's midfield did win that game. Their first and second midfield lines played outstanding.
It's funny when you watch Matthew Keegan, all right, it almost looks like Daniel Kelly has a twin brother out there, all right? He scored 1 goal from the same position Daniel always scores, and I thought it was Daniel, okay? But no, it was Keegan. But Kelly is, he got the pole on him, and if they don't, he'd kill him. Okay, there's no question with the way he plays around the goal, and that 1 goal that he was a jump shot that he tipped in was pretty unusual. But here's the bottom line: Terps are 4-0, and I never would have thought with our schedule and with the lack of supposed talent, thank you inside the cross, that they would be 4-0. But you know what? At the end of the day, that kid in the cage is doing it. All right. He has been fantastic overall. And you could see the confidence in his voice, the arrogance in his walk, the challenging position that he gives, the way he goes after the ball, the way he leaves the cage. He is playing at a different level. Now he is 24, 25. So there is an age edge there. But he is really playing well, Tony. I mean, am I wrong? Am I not seeing? Are you not seeing what I'm seeing?
He's playing. Well, it's funny. You look at the statistics. Princeton gets up 46 shots. They only get 21 of them on goal. So Logan's making 12 saves. But it seems like when you're watching the game, he's making more than 12 saves. So Um, he's making hard saves look easy. He's making them look almost casual. He had a 2-save sequence early in that third quarter when Princeton was really pressing out on offense really hard. Nate Kabiri gets 2 really, really good shots, and Logan gets big in the net and fights him off his shoulder. That defensive set right there, Princeton had 3 shot clocks. They end up with nothing, and it's because McNaney really stepped out and made those 2 big saves. But again, it's like he makes them look easy.
Yeah, I thought the game was over at that. After that possession, when they couldn't score, they must have had it for 5 minutes. When they could not score, I thought that it kind of like took the wind out of them. And look, when it was 8-6, the next goal was going to dictate the
Ford,
game.
Yeah, and Ford came down. That was when Ford came back down. He gets to the middle of the defense. They're slow to slide to him, and he gets that high bounce shot. That was it. That was the possession swing. The saves by McNaney, the long extended Princeton possession, and then Ford comes down and gets that high bounce shot, and that was it.
All
Tony,
right, you are listening.
Wait a minute. Go ahead, Wayne.
You are listening to the Big Dog Postgame Show, brought to you by the Big Dog himself, Rick Jacklich at the Jacklich Law Group, and by the new Viener X. We're going to have a word from Rick Jacklich and Coach Willard of the basketball team, and boys, that basketball team look good. And then from Viener X, and we'll be back on the Big Dog Postgame Show in a moment.
So Terp fans, if your family's injured in a car crash, you'd be barking mad not to call Rick and the Big Dogs at the Jacklich Law Group at 855-BIG-DOG-1.
But as you know, Coach, it's not the last win, it's the next win that's so important. And that's why we continue to hustle, continue to work so hard for all of our clients to earn that name, the Big Dogs from the small firm. Just like you do. You get your guys hustling all the time.
That's why we love you, Rick.
And most of all,
Go Terps!
Three, two, one. All right, guys. The season's underway. You got 8 regular season games left. Bruce, where's this season heading?
Well, we'll know a lot more after next week, and I want to ask Tony this because I'll accede to the fact that he knows more about this than me. Notre Dame next week, not the same team without Pat Cavanaugh, not the same team without some of their middies. And certainly not the same team without Liam Entenmann. So next week, Tony, how do you feel about the game going into it?
I think it's going to be a real low-scoring game. I think you're exactly right, Bruce. Notre Dame, look, they still wear the crown. They're still very deep. Chris Cavanaugh is still there. They've got a guy in the crease there that's been there for 15 years, playing Jake Taylor playing in the crease. But they're starting first time starting goalie. Real big game down in Atlanta. It's probably going to be a great crowd. And I imagine it's going to be a real defensive struggle. I'm thinking, 1-2 goal game at most. It doesn't look like either team. Both teams' defenses are just going to be so good.
Does this work in our favor that potentially this might be the first of 2 games against Notre Dame? Would we be better off for them not to see us because of the change in our team this year, or you don't think it means a damn thing?
I'm gonna throw a shout out here to the Inside Lacrosse, one of the Inside Lacrosse guys, Bruce. All right,
Okay.
Terry, you're like begrudgingly. Terry Foy in a podcast last week was talking about Maryland's optionality on offense. They just have so many options. And because Maryland hasn't lost a game yet, they haven't really had to tinker too much. So there hasn't been much need right now for Maryland to really start, get Coach Phipps mad scientists matching lineups, flipping all kinds of stuff around. You're starting to see it a little, right? You see Aiken come in today. Armitage and Dowd don't see the field. That's a bit of a change. But they're still running a pretty traditional kind of lineup. They're not getting too crazy with their lineups and pairings. For Notre Dame to see us now early in the season, I guarantee you it's not the same Maryland team. I think when Maryland gets into Big Ten play, you're going to start seeing a lot more lineup changes happening to just keep teams on edge a little more about Maryland's lineup. So I don't really think, I think it's going to be a good matchup. I think it's great for Maryland. It's going to do wonders for their strength of schedule, all that kind of stuff. Gives them a really good early season test again. I don't really think it's going to matter if Maryland sees them again later, because I think this Maryland team, come May, that offense is going to be very different.
That's why I asked you the question. I just don't know after that butt whipping we took last year. But, you don't have Faison. You don't have Pat Cavanaugh, who just really killed us.
Well, Faison was back. Faison was back today. He got a goal. Yeah, Faison's
so
back.
He was back. Okay.
Yeah, it's really hard to play football, especially when you play 15 football games and then come back and pick up a lacrosse season. We know that from Dante Trader.
How's
All
their
right, guys.
goalie? How's their goalie, Tony?
Again, highly regarded. They had been playing two goalies their first couple of games, which were really
that's like having no goalie, in my opinion.
Well, so it looks like they settled. It looks like they settled on the guy who had a little more experience. He had 16 saves today, 9 goals against Georgetown. So, 64% in goal for his. He had been Thomas Ricciardelli had been splitting time their first 2 games, but he went the distance today. 16 saves against 9 goals against. Look, they got a guy on defense named Sean Light, probably the top close defender in the country. They're going to be buttoned up on defense. They've got 2 really good face-off guys, same 2 guys they had last year. That who's going to get the possessions, who's going to be able to wear teams down. Notre Dame's probably not as deep this year on offense, but they're going to be solid.
They always are. Look, give Corrigan credit. He's done a great job building that semi-empire along with $80 million behind him. All right. So to his advantage, though, he's used it well. Just because you have it and you got all the scholarship players or the NIL scholarship players, you got to make it work. And Corrigan has. But, hey, 2 weeks ago, game of the week. All right. Last week, rather, Maryland, Syracuse. Today, the game of the week, Maryland and Princeton. That's how they looked at it. That's how Pelkey looked at it. This was the game of the week. Next week, Maryland, Notre Dame. Game of the week. All right. It doesn't stop. And give Tillman credit. Backs away from no one. 2 top 5 wins. I like our chances next week. I really do.
All right, Tony, what do you think about next week? And then we're wrapping it up here.
Defensive struggle. I don't know if the playing. What is the playing surface at Bobby Dodd Stadium? Are they grass? That'll be an interesting.
It's grass.
Thing. Yeah, I think that'll be the first time both of these teams will have played on grass. So Tillman, he'll have him out there on grass all week practicing. He'll leave no stone unturned. It's going to be an interesting setting. Look, what we've seen through 4 weeks so far, playing really tough competition. Maryland's defense travels. Offense is deep. I think Maryland's going to be in this game. Do I feel good about it? I don't feel bad about it.
Well,
just don't know. We really don't know, I guess.
I don't know, but it's almost unbelievable to think you're not going to lose a game. If you are going to lose a game, losing the number 1 team in the country isn't the worst thing in the world, but it's certainly a battle. And it is, as they said on the broadcast, this is must-watch TV. If you're not going to the game, you got to find a way to watch this one. It should be huge. Thanks to Bruce Posner. Thanks to Wheels Tony Wheeler. And, of course, to Rick Jacklich and to Viener X. We will be back with our lacrosse show after Maryland Notre Dame next week. I'm Wayne Viener. Thanks for watching.